Welcome to Section 6, Trial Operations, Startup to Closeout. If Section 5 was about the rules that govern clinical research, this section is about putting those rules into motion. Every protocol, every IND, every ethics approval exists so that something can actually happen, so that a trial can open, enroll participants, collect data, and generate the evidence that drives medical progress. This section follows the operational life cycle of a clinical trial from start to finish, selecting sites, activating them, monitoring what happens, managing the inevitable complexities of real-world data collection, and finally, closing everything down in a compliant, documented way. The people who do this work, clinical research associates, study coordinators, trial managers, data managers, are the operational backbone of clinical research. This section is for them, and for anyone who wants to understand what it actually takes to run a trial in the real world. Section 6 covers 5 operational phases that together make up the complete trial lifecycle. Lesson 6.1 covers site selection and feasibility, the process of identifying and qualifying investigative sites before the trial begins. Lesson 6.2 covers trial startup, everything from regulatory submissions to the site initiation visit and site activation. Lesson 6.3 goes deep on monitoring, the CRA's core activity, including on-site, remote, and risk-based monitoring approaches. Lesson 6.4 addresses trial conduct, protocol deviations, query management, and database lock readiness. And Lesson 6.5 covers trial closeout, the formal process of ending a site's participation, finalizing the trial master file, and meeting long-term archiving obligations. Lesson 6.1, Site Selection and Feasibility. The single most important operational decision in a clinical trial is which sites to select. Select well, and enrollment is smooth, data quality is high, and startup timelines are met. Select poorly, and no amount of monitoring or intervention can fully recover. In this lesson, we examine how sponsors identify, assess, and select investigative sites. Site selection happens at 2 levels. First, the sponsor decides which countries to include, then which specific sites within those countries. Country selection is driven by 4 main factors. Patient population. Does this country have enough diagnosed patients who meet the eligibility criteria and are willing to participate? Some therapeutic areas, particularly oncology and rare diseases, require very specific geographies. Regulatory timeline. How long does country-level review take, and how predictable is that timeline? A country with a fast average but high variance can be as problematic as a slow one. GCP infrastructure. Are there trained investigators and experienced site staff, functioning local laboratories, and reliable cold chain logistics? And cost profile. Site costs and patient stipend norms vary dramatically between regions. Once countries are selected, individual sites are assessed against 5 criteria: the PI's experience and regulatory history, the size and quality of the patient database relative to eligibility criteria, staff resources, including a dedicated study coordinator, facilities, including IP storage and lab accreditation, and current trial load. A site running 15 concurrent studies may simply lack the bandwidth to enroll another, regardless of how strong their patient pool is. A common mistake is accepting sites' own enrollment estimates at face value. Investigators consistently overestimate their enrollment potential. Sponsors who apply a systematic, conservative correction, typically 50% of what the site projects, build more realistic timelines. A site feasibility questionnaire can tell you what a site says it can do. The site qualification visit, the SQV, tells you what it can actually do. The SQV is an in-person or remote assessment conducted by the sponsor's CRA or a CRO before a site is formally selected. Its purpose is verification, not assumption. 6 domains are assessed during a well-run SQV. The investigator interview evaluates the PI's knowledge of the protocol and their genuine enthusiasm for the study, not just their signature. Staff assessment reviews the coordinator and sub-investigators. Are they GCP trained? How overloaded are they? Do they actually understand their roles? Patient database review involves looking at real patient records, anonymized if necessary, and making a realistic enrollment estimate based on actual eligibility matching, not optimistic projections. Facilities inspection is non-negotiable. The monitor physically verifies IP storage conditions, including temperature monitoring and backup power, inspects the space where study procedures will occur, and confirms the archiving capability for essential documents. EDC and systems readiness confirms that the IT infrastructure works and that the site can actually access the study platforms on day 1. And regulatory history review checks FDA databases for prior disqualifications, warning letters, or GCP inspection findings for the PI and sub-investigators. The SQV report becomes the documented basis for the site selection decision, and it is a document that regulators will ask to see during an inspection.